Mickey lost his memory in a car accident and forgot all about me. The only person he remembered was that pretentious coquette who got in the crash with him. He said he wanted to divorce me and marry her. I didn't say a word, just agreed. Later, when he regained his memory, he searched for me everywhere. A friend told me he even got into another accident while speeding late at night looking for me. Chapter 1. I had just been discharged from the hospital when I received a call from Mickey's assistant, Jenny. She was frantic on the phone. Diana. Something happened. Mr. Koo was in a car accident. He's at People's Hospital. When I rerouted and arrived at the hospital, Mickey Koo was busy comforting a panicked Jenny. He was holding her hand, speaking softly. Jenny, I'm fine. Mickey really was fine, but our marriage wasn't. Mickey didn't recognize me. The doctor said the accident wasn't serious, but it had caused some trauma to Mickey's brain, resulting in temporary selective amnesia. Watching the way he comforted Jenny, I had no doubt the doctor was right about his brain being messed up. Chapter 2. Mickey and I were college classmates. We'd known each other for 10 years, dated for 4, and had been married for 3. He was blessed with good looks. In college, plenty of girls liked him. After graduation, he started his own company and became a CEO. The number of admirers only grew. But I never took those women seriously. When I first met Mickey, he was going through his darkest days. His parents divorced just as he started college, leaving him questioning everything. Weren't his parents always loving? Why did they split the moment he entered university? So in our freshman year, he drank a lot. One time when I was out, I found him drunk and half dead, and I dragged him back to campus. Seeing how miserable he looked, I started taking care of him. Slowly, we became close, really close. How close? If he messaged me in the middle of the night saying he craved barbecue, I would leave my warm bed in freezing weather to go eat with him. If I was too busy gaming in the dorm on the weekend and didn't want to go out for lunch, I'd text him saying the spicy vermicelli at the school gate looked good. Less than half an hour later, he'd show up smiling under my dorm with a steaming bowl in hand. During winter and summer breaks, he hated staying with either parent. Felt awkward. He'd call me, and I'd book the earliest flight to his city just to see him and comfort him. And so on. Right before graduation, he suddenly confessed to me, under a sky full of stars, holding my favorite flowers. He said, Diana, I like you. Just those few simple words. And I said yes. I became his girlfriend. Because I liked him too. There's no such thing as just a good buddy, it's just unrequited love disguised as friendship. Chapter 3. A year after graduation, Mickey, young and fearless, decided to start his own business with the money from his parents. I quit my job to support him and joined the startup. We had no experience, just raw courage and a lot of trial and error. In the beginning, we drank with clients until we were both puking at the sight of each other's faces. But no matter how hard we pushed ourselves, the company made no progress. There was a time when Mickey couldn't even pay salaries. We had to scrape together money from every corner just to cover payroll. Back then, he held me tightly and cried more than once. Diana, if I ever betray you in this lifetime, I don't deserve to be human. Let lightning strike me dead. We endured like that for 1 or 2 years until the company finally got on track. Not long after that, Mickey proposed to me. He said, Diana, we've walked together for 7 years. There'll never be a better partner, nor a deeper love than what we share. So let's get married. No fancy dowry, no elaborate bride price. We just bought a small apartment near the office and got married. In the 3 years that followed, we rarely fought. Except for Chapter 4. Right now, I stood there watching the 2 people in the hospital room tightly holding hands. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. My face was burning with embarrassment. Jenny, perhaps feeling awkward, kept her head down. After all, when she joined our company 2 years ago fresh out of school, her family had a financial emergency. I was the one who lent her money to help her out. She now avoided eye contact and even tried to pull her hand out of Mickey's grasp. But Mickey only held on tighter and looked straight at me. Who are you? He asked. Good question. Give me a second to think. After a pause, I said, I'm your boss. Mickey frowned, clearly annoyed. Don't be sarcastic. I know who I am. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, so you do know who you are? I thought your amnesia wiped out even your basic self-awareness. Mickey went silent. Chapter 5. At first, Mickey refused to believe I was his wife. His exact words were, "The one I've always loved is Jenny. There's no way I would have married you. Just look at your face. Your figure, literally everything I hate. I've always had a serious face. When I don't smile, even neighbors' kids get scared of me. That's not something I can change. As for my figure, well, I was 4 months pregnant, and instead of morning sickness, I'd had an endless appetite. I'd already gained over 10 pounds. At first, I thought Mickey just mistook Jenny for me because of his memory loss. Until he said, "No way, absolutely not. I drove out to find Jenny today because I was going to propose to her. I remember it clearly." He even turned to Jenny to confirm, "Right, Jenny? We promised to overcome everything and be brave enough to be together." Jenny didn't speak, but the look in her eyes agreed with every word Mickey said. And suddenly, everything became clear. Mickey had been cheating on me. He and Jenny had been secretly involved for a while, and I was the only fool who didn't know. After a moment, Jenny looked at me too, like she'd finally made up her mind. "Diana, I'm sorry. Mickey and we're truly in love." It took me 3 seconds to process it. "Put your true love on hold," I said. "Maybe learn a thing or two about bigamy laws first." Mickey said nothing. Jenny said nothing. A few days later, Mickey was discharged. I slammed our marriage certificate down in front of him. Only then did he finally accept the truth. He stared at it for a long time, then finally looked up and said, "Let's get a divorce." He had once started our love with just a few words, and now, with just a few words, he ended our marriage. Chapter 6. Over the past few days, I've figured out exactly when Mickey and Jenny started sneaking around behind my back. Honestly, I didn't even need to investigate that hard. Jenny came to me herself, thinking she could take advantage of Mickey's amnesia and move up in status. She told me straight up, they started getting involved when something happened to her family, or rather, that's when Mickey started noticing her. It was 2 years ago. Jenny's mother was gravely ill and urgently needed money for treatment. Jenny had tried borrowing from everyone she could but came up empty-handed. In the end, I lent her 100,000 yuan to help her through it. That's when I also learned more about her background. Her parents divorced when she was in middle school, and she ended up living with her mom. They didn't have much money. She even took out student loans to get through college. At the time, I told Mickey I really liked this girl. She had grit. Even if she was stuck in the mud, she still managed to bloom like a bright flower. Mickey had chuckled and said, "Doesn't her situation kinda remind you of me when we first met? Are you planning to be everyone's savior or something?" In the end, it was the two people who supposedly needed saving that ended up together. Kind of a joke. Really, Jenny kept explaining. At first, Mr. Koo and I were really just friends. According to her, one day she came into work with red eyes from crying over her mother's illness. As luck would have it, Mickey ran into her. He comforted her briefly. It started with small talks, bits of encouragement when he had downtime. Their family situations were somewhat similar. Both came from broken homes. That gave them something to connect over. It also became the excuse for their emotional bond. Mickey understood how awkward and painful it was for her to visit her father. She understood the loneliness Mickey felt during holidays with nowhere to go. So they talked more and more, got closer and closer, like they were long-lost soulmates. One time, when Mickey was drunk, he told her, "If I hadn't met Diana first, if I could turn back time, I'd definitely fall for you. I'd chase after you." I asked, "So that's when you two got together?" Jenny shook her head. "No, not yet. They didn't officially get together until the 2nd month of my pregnancy." Mickey got drunk again, asked her to meet him late at night to talk, and that talk ended in bed. Suddenly, I remembered the first and only fight Mickey and I had during our 3-year marriage. It was in the 2nd month of my pregnancy. That night, he came home late, reeking of alcohol. I pushed him away, saying the smell was too strong. I was pregnant. He got angry and accused me of not caring about him, not asking why he drank so much. He kept going in circles, complaining for ages, until I snapped and yelled at him. We didn't speak for 2 days after that. Now I realized his strange behavior that night was because he had just cheated. In that instant, I finally understood why they ended up together. I hadn't experienced any morning sickness since getting pregnant. But right then, I threw up. Chapter 7. Right now. Looking at Mickey again, I felt like throwing up. I forced down the urge to scream and said calmly, "Divorce it is. Whoever backs out is a coward." But saying the word divorce is easy. Actually going through with it would be painful for both of us. And Mickey's mother was especially against it. The day after Mickey and I decided to divorce, she came to see me. She had divorced Mickey's father because he cheated during their marriage. Not long after they split, he remarried. She never did. So naturally, Mickey was much closer to her. After we settled down in City A, Mickey brought her to live with us. She liked me a lot. In the 3 years after our wedding, we got along incredibly well. Even the notoriously difficult mother-in-law and daughter-in-law dynamic never existed between us. When she found out I was the one who had stood by Mickey through his hardest times, she hugged me and cried, "Sweetheart, thank you. From now on, you're my daughter, too." And it wasn't just empty words. For all 3 years of our marriage, she truly treated me like her own. When I was too busy at the office to eat, she would come all the way just to bring me food. She remembered I didn't eat green onions, so at home, she never used them in a single dish. Whenever we went shopping and she saw something I liked, she'd always buy it for me. While other mothers-in-law might pressure their daughters-in-law to have kids, she never did. She used to say, "Sweetheart, giving birth is hard. Even if you and Mickey choose not to have kids, I'll still be happy." When she found out I was pregnant, she cried secretly more than once. One day I came home and overheard her talking to one of the ladies she danced with in the square downstairs. Thankfully, my girl's pregnancy's been smooth, no nausea, no pain. Otherwise, I'd be worried sick. And she didn't just say those things, she meant them. When she first heard the news, she was even more nervous than Mickey. She wanted to follow me around 24/7, terrified something might happen to the baby. If I so much as said I had a craving, she'd get it for me instantly. She was a major reason I'd gained over 10 pounds. I used to joke with her, "Mom, if this keeps up, I'm going to weigh 180 pounds. And she'd reply, "Even at 180, you'd still be the most beautiful girl in the world to me." But I didn't even make it to 180. And soon, I wouldn't be her girl anymore. Chapter 8. Koo's mom lived just one floor above us. By the time she arrived, Mickey Koo had already left to be with Jenny, she had called him, saying she wasn't feeling well. That was also the moment I learned. Even though he had only been with Jenny for a little over 2 months, he had already bought her a villa. I didn't try to stop him from going. A person who wants to leave, even if you die right in front of them, they won't spare you a second glance. They'll just complain that your corpse is blocking their way. Seeing me sitting alone on the sofa, Koo's mom asked, "Sweetheart, where's Mickey?" I said, "He went to take care of Jenny. She has a fever today." In an instant, the kind, ideal mother-in-law turned into a full-on street brawler. A fever? My ass. What she's got isn't a fever, it's heat in a whole other sense. While cursing, she pulled out her phone and called Mickey. Once the call connected, her rage cranked up another level. "Mickey, I'm pretty damn sure I gave birth to a human being. So how did you end up turning into something lower than an animal?" "Mickey, Mom," she cut him off. "I'm giving you 30 minutes. If you don't get home by then, don't ever call me Mom again." Mickey tried to say something, but just then I heard a glass shatter through the phone, followed by Jenny's dramatic scream. "Ah." Mickey said nothing more, just left one line, "Mom." Jenny fell. "I have to go." And then he hung up. When she called again, Mickey didn't answer. Koo's mom looked like she was about to smash her phone, probably held back because I was there. Instead, she slammed it onto the coffee table. After taking a long breath to calm herself, she finally said to me, "Sweetheart, divorce is bad for both of you." But the more she talked, the more it triggered memories of her own failed marriage with Koo's dad. She started ranting again. "Mickey, that ungrateful bastard, I swear. One day I'll break his legs myself." And she wasn't bluffing. On the first day of Mickey's hospital stay after the accident, she went to visit him, but when she saw he didn't recognize me and clung to Jenny like she was the love of his life, She slapped him right across the face. Then, with a swift turn, she even started beating Jenny too, all the while shouting, "True love? If this scumbag truly loved you, would he let you settle for being the other woman?" Eventually, the doctor had to intervene and stop her from continuing the beatdown. But maybe it was exactly because she slapped Jenny that Mickey became even more convinced Jenny was his one true love, and that me and his mom were the villains standing in the way. So after that, he had nothing but cold glares for the both of us. And that's why, aside from visiting him on the first day, neither I nor his mother stepped foot in the hospital again during the rest of his stay. Chapter 9. We can't get divorced. Koo's mom's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. She was furious. Why should that gold-digging homewrecker get to enjoy everything you and Mickey worked so hard to build? Honestly, by this point, I couldn't even tell whether she was truly upset on my behalf, or if she just didn't want me divorcing her son because she was afraid I'd take half his assets. I'd been with Mickey for 10 years. If even he could betray me after all that time, and act like he was completely in love the whole time, then what could I really expect from his mother? Looking at her indignant face, I said calmly, "Mom, I am going to divorce him. If I could tolerate Mickey cheating on me, I might as well be force-feeding myself a bucket of flies and calling it dinner. And besides, when it comes to cheating, it's never just once. It's always again and again. But the company? Now that, I was definitely going to fight for. Mickey and I weren't filthy rich. But in a mid-sized city like City A, we'd built something real. The company's annual revenue was already in the 9-figure range. I was the vice president and also a shareholder. Koo's mom hesitated. But sweetheart, what about the baby? I fell silent. The baby, that was the one thing I still hadn't figured out. It had been nearly 5 months. I could already feel him moving inside me. On the day Mickey had his accident, I had just gone for a prenatal checkup. Everything was normal. Looking at my belly, Koo's mom said again, "The baby hasn't even been born yet, and you're talking about raising him in a broken home? That poor child." She started crying. The next day, my parents arrived in City A. After I explained everything, my mom could do nothing but cry. My dad was quiet for a long time before saying, "Get the divorce. As for the baby, keep him if you want. We'll help you raise him." I thought about it all night, and finally, I made my decision. On the third day after making that decision, Jenny came to see me again, because I had already fired her from the company, and sent a lawyer to reclaim the villa Mickey had gifted her. She was here to talk about the villa, maybe because Mickey had lost his memory and was now completely on her side. She no longer bothered to fake any civility. Her logic was so delusional, it was almost laughable. She said, "In love, it doesn't matter who came first. The one who isn't loved is the real intruder." I rolled my eyes. Wow, you've somehow managed to dress up a social climbing fantasy as love. That's impressive. Jenny didn't reply, maybe trying to prove they were really in love. She played me a voice recording. In the audio, Mickey's voice came through, gentle and soft. "Jenny, I walked through life and death. It made me realize life is short. Even if the world stands against us, we still have to be together." Looking at her smug face, I said coldly, "How touching. Even beasts know how to mimic human speech now, though what they say still isn't human." She started, but I cut her off. "Neither of you even qualify as decent people. Why do you even need a villa? Just find a hole in the ground and stay there together for the rest of your lives." She clenched her teeth. "Diana," I interrupted her again, "don't bother me again, otherwise, I'll record a nice little video, buy a trending hashtag, and let the whole internet see what kind of animals know how to dress like humans." Honestly, on the first day of Mickey's accident, I had wanted to expose the affair publicly, but doing that would have hurt the company's stability, and since I still owned a share of it, I wasn't about to let two trashy cheaters ruin everything I helped build. Plus, I worried that if the affair went public, Mickey might cave under public pressure and start second-guessing the divorce. In the end, Jenny didn't dare say anything more, and left. Chapter 10. I don't know what Jenny told Mickey. Half a month later, Mickey, who had been staying with Jenny all this time, came back. When he returned, I had just undergone a surgical abortion and was lying weakly in bed. barely recovered from the hospital. He stood over me with indignation in his eyes and snapped. Diana, we're already getting divorced. Why are you still being so aggressive? Buying Jenny a villa was my personal decision, it has nothing to do with you. I glanced at him. Do you not know the law? Or did you lose your brain along with your memory? Truthfully, I knew very well, Mickey didn't lose his brain. Before the amnesia, guilt over our 10 years together kept him in check. Even if he had thought about divorce, he couldn't bring himself to do it. Now, without the emotional weight of those 10 years, or the moral obligation from everything I had done for him, he could finally show his true self. He didn't admire strength. What he really craved was Jenny's dependence. It fed his sense of importance. Jenny had once said smugly, "Mickey prefers being the light that others chase." Sure enough, after my sarcastic jab, he said again, "Diana, you know why I knew from the start you couldn't be the woman I love? Because your dominance is just off-putting." I was strong-willed, no denying that. But back then, Mickey said he loved that about me. He once told me, if I hadn't barged into his life so forcefully back in college, he might have gone off the rails during freshman year. He said if it weren't for my strength when our startup was floundering, pulling him up when he wanted to give up, we wouldn't have what we have today. When we got married, his eyes were still full of light when he looked at me. He said I was his salvation. But now, he had forgotten all that, and the light I once shone in his life had become a blinding glare. I tugged up the corner of my lips. What a coincidence. I was always disgusted by the way you do something and still pretend you didn't. That cowardice of yours. Now stop barking in my face. Return the villa you gave Jenny. After the divorce, you can buy her whatever you want, but until then, I will take you to court. Mickey opened his mouth to say something, and suddenly got smacked on the back of the head with a slipper. He turned around, only to see his mom charging at him with the other slipper in hand. She hit him square in the face. "Diana just had surgery, and you're here yelling like a damn dog?" Mickey was speechless. Only then did he turn back to me and ask, "You terminated the pregnancy?" I said, "Don't act like you ever cared." But deep down, I knew he did care, because with a child involved, it would affect how the assets got divided. Ku's mom had warned him, if he insisted on the divorce, half of his company's shares should go to the baby. I already owned 35% of the company. If the child took half of Mickey's remaining shares, the company would practically have my name on it. So I saw it, clear as day. That moment of relief on his face. That was his true nature. And to think, he had put on 10 years of deep, devoted affection, and I never saw through it. Hollywood owes him an Oscar. After Ku's mom smacked Mickey out of the room, she looked at me, sad, heartbroken, but ultimately silent. She really was hurting. I hadn't planned to tell her about the procedure, but somehow, she found out. When I came out of the operating room, I saw her waiting outside, eyes red from crying. She was the first to rush up, before even my own mother, grabbing my hand, tears falling like rain as she choked out, "Sweetheart." During the 10 days I was hospitalized, she visited me almost every day. After I was discharged, she personally cooked for me. She said, "Even if the bond ends, part ways with Grace." But I knew she was hurting too. Mickey had stabbed her in the heart when he chose Jenny over her, when she demanded that he hand over half the company shares to the child if he was going to divorce me. Mickey had screamed at her, "You never support your own son. No wonder Dad left you." And in that moment, that was the exact second I stopped loving Mickey. Chapter 11. I spent another half-month recovering before I approached Mickey to talk about the divorce. During those 2 weeks, except for the day he came home and got cursed out by me and his mom, Mickey stayed entirely at Jenny's place. He must have made some new promises to her, because although she was clearly unhappy, she ended up returning the villa and all the money Mickey had given her over the past few months. What I didn't expect, though, was that when Mickey finally sat down with me to discuss the divorce agreement, he actually had the audacity to suggest that I give up my shares in the company. "You can have the car, the house, and the savings," he said, "but if we're breaking up, let's make it clean. We'll be divorced. It'll be weird still working at the same company. I don't want Jenny to misunderstand the shamelessness," he actually said. "So just give up your shares and leave the company." A giant question mark popped up in my head. I looked at him like he was an idiot. After a few seconds of silence, I nodded slowly. You know what? You're right. We can't have Jenny misunderstanding. So, to avoid that, why don't you walk away with nothing? I mean, you've already got love, surely a few shares and a little money don't matter to you anymore, right? Mickey said. I built that company from scratch. You weren't even part of it at the beginning. I gave a cold laugh. Not your fault you got hit by a car and ended up brain damaged. Let me remind you, when you couldn't even afford payroll, I used my parents' money to help you cover it. That's when I bought into the company. Everything it's become today, I've been there every step of the way, investing both money and effort. Mickey had no reply. I added, stop whining like a baby. If Jenny hears you acting like you don't even want to get divorced, that's gonna be real awkward. At this point, he didn't mention Jenny's feelings anymore. He just kept insisting that I give up my shares, or at least sell them to him at the lowest possible price. And so, our first round of divorce talks ended with no agreement. I was getting anxious. The doctor said Mickey's amnesia was temporary. If we dragged this out too long and he regained his memory before we finalized the divorce, he'd probably go back to pretending to be some noble, good man again. That would only make things harder. And taking this to court? A total time sink and a legal mess. So I stepped up the pressure, calling Mickey 3 times a day, and giving Jenny her own share of stress. My methods included, but were not limited to, sending someone to tell her the full story of me and Mickey's past, and explaining in detail how if Mickey suddenly regained his memory, her little upgrade to wife plan would crash and burn on the spot. This went on for another 2 weeks, but Mickey still wouldn't budge. I was getting desperate. Right after I submitted the official petition for divorce to the court, something finally changed. Jenny got pregnant. I thanked her. Sincerely. Chapter 12. Dear friends, here's a little reality check for you. The whole idea that a mother gains status through her child is wrong. It's actually the child who inherits their mother's status. After Mickey lost his memory, he couldn't care less about the baby I was carrying. He saw it as a burden. When I had the abortion, he even looked relieved. But once Jenny got pregnant, Mickey changed. For once, without me chasing him down about the divorce, he lowered himself enough to come to me voluntarily. Though of course, the first words out of his mouth were still garbage. Diana, what will it take for you to give up your shares in the company? I paused for 3 seconds, then named my price, 10 billion yuan. He lost it. Why don't you go rob a bank? First of all, I don't have that kind of money. Second, are you money crazed? I shrugged, completely unfazed, and grinned wide. Then don't divorce me. I've thought it over during this time. Why bother divorcing at all? As long as we're still legally married. I'm your wife. Every single cent you spend on Jenny? I'll sue her for it. I'll make her life hell. And that child she's carrying will be branded a bastard from the moment it's born. Illegitimate. Always looking at the world from under a shadow. Honestly, just imagining it makes me feel great. Mickey was furious. Before he could explode and flip the table, I stood up and walked out. Ha! I'm not the one begging for divorce anymore. Now you're the one who has to beg me. Chapter 13. A few days later, there was a business banquet, and both Mickey and I were invited. Initially, I didn't want to go. Lately, to avoid triggering any sudden memory recovery in Mickey, I had even gone on Shihu to search for ways to prevent selective amnesia from being reversed, just to avoid doing anything that might jog his memory. But I accidentally slipped into a rabbit hole of amnesia-themed romance novels. I figured, hey, art imitates life. I got so into one of them, and then suddenly saw, to be continued. I was speechless, furious. I stormed into the comments section. Author, I'm a paying VIP member. This is so short, how dare you? Still, I gathered enough useful info, plus the doctor's advice. To sum things up, the key was to stay out of Mickey's sight and avoid stimulating him. But the moment I found out Mickey was bringing Jenny to the banquet, I immediately did a full glam look, fierce and seductive. The goal? Not to provoke Mickey, but to piss off Jenny and make her lose it enough to start drama with Mickey. At the banquet, I deliberately linked arms with Mickey, and right where Jenny could see, I kissed his cheek and giggled at him like a teenage fangirl. Mission accomplished. We both grossed ourselves out. And Jenny almost exploded, veins popping on her forehead. Too bad for her. There were too many people around. She couldn't lash out. My turn to smirk in triumph. Letting go of Mickey, I walked past her and whispered, "Not so fun being the other woman." Huh? The man you love is right in front of you, but you don't even have the right to hold his hand. Jenny's face went pale in an instant. I added with a sweet smile, "Mickey and I decided we're not divorcing, by the way." Jenny, speechless, after successfully wrecking her mood. I found a quiet corner to sit down, halfway through a glass of juice. Someone sat across from me. Tony, the infamous spoiled second-generation heir from our rival company. He glanced over at Mickey, who was now comforting Jenny in the far corner, and said dryly, "President Jing, am I hallucinating, or is your metaphorical head looking a little green tonight?" I gave him a side eye. "You enjoying this?" He nodded sincerely. Watching a rival CEO destroy himself is one of life's simplest pleasures. I was speechless. The corner of my mouth twitched. Wow, he was honestly shameless. Then again, this kid had always been refreshingly blunt. Just last year, fresh out of college, he lost a bid to us. Later, he snuck into our office and swapped out the waving Lucky Cat figurine at our front desk with a bye-bye cat that waved goodbye instead. I caught him red-handed. He didn't even look embarrassed. He said with righteous confidence, "True corporate warfare is often crude and straightforward." I laughed so hard. I bought him a bubble tea. While sipping it, he sulked and complained that his dad chewed him out for half an hour for losing the bid. Not that Tony's family needed the deal. They were real powerhouses in City A. Most likely, his dad just used it as an excuse to scold him for being too soft. Now, here he was again, openly gloating over the collapse of my marriage. And just as sincerely asking, "Did Mr. Koo get his head slammed in the car door during the accident?" I couldn't help but laugh. Even outsiders understood what was at stake. Meanwhile, Mickey had used his amnesia to dumb himself down to a whole new level. If word got out that he was divorcing me, the company's stock would be rattled, and several major contracts I signed might be at risk of cancellation. I wasn't just his wife. I was his business partner, one of the key decision makers in the company. But as I followed Tony's gaze and looked over at the couple now hugging in the corner, I could only nod slightly. We couldn't keep this under wraps much longer. Luckily, it wouldn't be long before we were officially divorced. No need to keep hiding it for much longer. Chapter 14. Sure enough, the very next day, Mickey gave in. Only then did I realize, even before he lost his memory, Mickey had already been guarding against me. All the back and forth we'd gone through had only managed to protect what was already mine, my premarital assets, and the wealth I'd earned with my own hands after marriage. He didn't let me take a single penny more than I was entitled to, but I didn't want to fight anymore. All I cared about now was finalizing the divorce before he got his memory back. After one last brutal month of legal wrangling, we finally made it through the mandatory cooling-off period. When we walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau with our divorce papers in hand, I suddenly remembered the scene from 3 years ago, when we first came here to register our marriage. Back then, the moment we stepped out, he pulled me into his arms and kissed me all over, beaming, "Diana, you're my wife now." He even called me wifey several times in a row, until he finally realized how silly he looked and awkwardly stopped. Now, standing here again, I glanced at Mickey as he stared blankly at the divorce certificate in his hand. For some reason, he suddenly called out, "Diana, sis." I frowned. What the hell? Don't tell me he suddenly got his memory back the second he got the divorce certificate. That would be peak melodrama. Before I had time to overthink it, Jenny, waiting by the curb, rushed up and wrapped herself around Mickey's arm. This time, the look she gave me was truly triumphant, like she had finally won. From the expression on her face, she clearly wanted to throw in a few smug remarks, but I didn't have time to listen to whatever nonsense was about to come out of her mouth. I was too busy liquidating my shares in the company, and selling off the house Mickey and I used to live in, with the way his amnesia had turned him into a complete idiot. I didn't want to lose any more money by staying too close. Chapter 15. 3 months later, I sold off all my shares, left the company, and went public with my divorce from Mickey. I also revealed that he had cheated with Jenny while we were still married. Several major deals I had lined up for renewal fell through, all of them snatched up by Tony's family's company. Tony was so excited. He came running to tell me while I was on vacation, sprawled out on a beach, completely zoning out. After 10 years in City A, this was the first time I truly appreciated how beautiful a coastal city it was. Sunshine, waves, and six-pack abs everywhere. Absolutely stunning. Well, everything except Tony chirping beside me nonstop. He was over the moon. Diana, stop staring at those six-packs. That kind of distraction will ruin you. I turned my head to look at him. He was still hyped. My dad praised me today. I rolled my eyes. Did he praise you for stealing people while they were down? Or for wasting money by hiring an entire team with 1.5x market salaries to sit around and do nothing? Tony, speechless. He had poached the very team I had trained at Mickey's company. Maybe Mickey really got brain damage from that car crash. Ever since our divorce, he developed some paranoid delusion that I was going to retaliate. Like I'd send my old team back to sabotage him or something. Or maybe it's just that, after news of his affair with Jenny got out, those team members said a few things behind his back. And unlucky as ever, Jenny happened to overhear them. So even though Mickey had bought back my shares at a high price, he still went after my old team and tried to suppress them. Tony seized the opportunity, hired them all and paid them to chill. He bragged. Hey, if money can solve the problem, then it's not a real problem. I didn't care how Mickey tried to burn his empire down. I had already walked away. But Tony had his eye on me now. Diana, he said, have you thought about the plan I mentioned last time? Tony's plan was Operation Escape Dad. He wanted to break free and start his own thing, but his dad had told him to just sit quietly in the family business and not get scammed. After my divorce, Tony suddenly had a brainwave. He'd team up with me, as he put it. My dad respects your work ethic and money-making ability. If I'm working with you, he won't object. Now, he was pestering again. Diana, you've been resting for 3 months. I don't care how rich you are, every day you spend doing nothing is another day you're hemorrhaging cash. Doesn't it kill you inside? I laughed, and agreed to go into business with Tony. Honestly, when I sold my shares to Mickey at a high price, I already planned to start something on my own. If I could lean on the Tony family name, I could skip all the startup growing pains. Tony had even prepped a full team for me. Why choose hell mode when there's a shortcut available? On the day our new company opened, I unexpectedly received a gift from Mickey. Tony stared at the box, face darkening. A guy who would sacrifice company interests just to chase some woman's approval? We are not accepting a gift from a guy with that kind of lovesick brain rot. What if it's contagious? It'll ruin our money-making vibes. Toss that cursed thing out. Fair enough. I nodded and chucked Mickey's gift straight into the trash bin by the door. That night at our company launch dinner, Tony invited a few of his fellow trust fund baby friends. A few drinks in, and he was clearly in his usual chaos gremlin mode. He lifted one friend's shirt and turned to me. Diana, look at this. Who cares about six-packs? This guy has 8. With enough money, you can swap out your abs like car parts. I nearly choked on my drink. Before I could say anything, another friend slapped his hand away in a panic. Put his shirt down. We're running a clean business here. You idiot. Tony, utterly speechless. Chapter 16. Half a year later, at a business banquet, I saw Mickey Koo for the first time since I sold off my shares in the Koo family company. He looked tired, a little worn down. If I calculated correctly, Jenny had already given birth. Back then, Koo's mom had sacrificed her own marriage for Mickey. Even when Mickey's father cheated, she never made a scene or confronted the mistress. She endured everything until Mickey went off to college before finally filing for divorce. Now, the more she thought about it, the angrier she got, and she took all that anger out on Jenny. When Jenny got pregnant, Koo's mom demanded a paternity test, trying to win her over. Jenny actually agreed to an amniocentesis during pregnancy. Jenny wanted to hold a wedding. Koo's mom threatened to kill herself if they dared. She even took to social media to throw shade. Some things just aren't fit to be seen in public. 2 weeks before Jenny gave birth, Koo's mom bought herself tickets for a world tour. Right before she left, she posted another gem. I can't stand being around dirty things. And so on. And so forth. She absolutely nailed the role of the toxic nightmare mother-in-law. Every time I saw her posts online, it felt like I was watching a soap opera. I could hardly remember the soft, gentle version of her who used to call me daughter. Meanwhile, ever since I announced Mickey's infidelity after our divorce, his company had lost some of its partnerships. After launching my new company with Tony, we took advantage of the momentum to poach some old clients, cutting into Coup Corp's business significantly. I'll admit it, it was intentional. Mickey chose love over everything else. So clearly, he didn't care about money. Great. I do care about money, and all I want is to make more of it. So yeah, with both his company and his household in disarray. No wonder Mickey looked wrecked. And Jenny? She was nothing like I used to be. Forget whether she had any skills. Right now, she was too busy fighting off Coup's mom while raising a newborn. If she didn't cause more problems for Mickey, that would already be considered a win. But honestly, none of that concerned me anymore. The moment Mickey stabbed his mother in the heart for Jenny, he stopped being human in my eyes. But just as I was about to walk past Mickey at the banquet, Tony, out of nowhere, looped his arm through mine and greeted him. Mr. Coup. Mickey's gaze lingered on our linked arms for several seconds. His expression shifted more than once, then finally settled into indifference as he clinked glasses with Tony. Later, I turned to Tony and scolded. Did you lose your damn mind? Tony replied. Diana, you're my personal cash cow now, and a cash cow's business is my business. I had to help you regain your dignity. I glanced ahead, at the gorgeous man now scowling from across the room, the same guy who had scolded Tony last time for towing the line. Without a word, I nodded, then patted Tony's hand sweetly, with the full force of petty malice. Tony wanted to go solo for one reason. Someday soon, he might be forced to choose between love and inheritance, especially if he got caught up with that gorgeous man again. But for now, what he had to face was that same gorgeous man, walking toward him with a dark face. As for me, good deed accomplished. No need for applause. I vanished into the crowd like a legend. The next day, Tony showed up at the office looking drained, yawning. Diana, listen, just want to say, thank you, I replied. You're welcome, Tony sighed. Having you in my life is my greatest blessing. Chapter 17. In the blink of an eye, it was winter again. Late one night, I suddenly received a call from Mickey. He was using a number I didn't recognize. Caught off guard by his voice, I frowned and was about to hang up when he hurriedly said, Diana, I remember everything now, I replied. Ugh, what a fucking buzzkill, he said. I'm sorry, I said. Not accepted, not forgiven. The next day, I found out from Tony that a project at Mickey's company had crashed. They were facing massive compensation claims, and if they couldn't pay, the company might go bankrupt. No wonder he suddenly remembered me. For the past 2 years, I had been busy expanding my company and hardly paid attention to Mickey's personal life. Occasionally, I'd take a few days off, but when I returned, Tony would look at me with that aggrieved expression. It was a full-on silent accusation that I was slacking off and slowing down his pursuit of freedom. Damn it, being the boss but still suffering like a corporate slave, who would get it? But this city, not exactly small, had its small world moments too. Just half a year ago, I went out for dinner with Tony and the other guy, and when we were about to head home, we happened to bump into Jenny and Mickey having a fight in the underground parking lot. Apparently, Mickey had cheated on Jenny again. As they say, when it comes to cheating, there's only 0 times or countless times. When I saw them, Jenny was hysterically yelling at Mickey. Mickey, what the fuck is wrong with you? I was about to leave, but seeing them fight, I paused with my hands still on the ignition. Don't ask why. Let's just say, watching enemies suffer makes even a dying person want to sit up and grab popcorn. Looking up, Mickey was shouting back impatiently. Jenny, are you crazy? She's just a client. Can you stop being so unreasonable? You're turning into a complete psycho lately. Jenny wasn't backing down. Who the hell spends the whole day with a client? Ignores all calls and messages? If you've got nothing to hide, why can't you even answer the phone? Isn't this exactly how you used to sneak around with me behind Diana's back? I sighed. For fuck's sake. Stop dragging my corpse out and flogging it. Still, I had to admit, Jenny, having climbed her way up from mistress to girlfriend, was much more suspicious and alert than I had ever been. Back when Mickey and I were together, I hardly questioned where he went. They kept arguing for a while until Mickey violently shook off Jenny's hand, got in the car, and drove off without a second glance, leaving Jenny alone in the parking lot, sobbing her eyes out. Not far off, as she turned to get in her own car, she saw me. She froze for a second, then quickly wiped her tears in embarrassment. She looked just like a cast-off woman, such a far cry from the sweet, innocent little white flower image she had when she first came to provoke me. I smiled at her and said, "TSK, TSK, true love, huh?" Then I, too, drove off. Whether Mickey had actually cheated on Jenny or not, I didn't care. As long as they were unhappy, I was at peace. To them, I only had one thing to say: respect, blessings, and please, lock that shit down forever. But it was only after Mickey's company hit a crisis that he suddenly started reminiscing about the past and called me in the middle of the night. Did he seriously think one phone call would make me stupid enough to go back and shoulder this mess with him? Like, what kind of fantasy world does he live in? Be fucking for real. Then again, maybe that really is the fantasy he lives in. Over the following month, he called me countless times. Even though I hung up the moment I heard his voice and blocked several of his numbers, he kept harassing me, relentlessly. When calling didn't work, he stooped even lower, creepily following me around just to disgust me. One evening, after working overtime, I saw Mickey standing outside my company. His beard was unshaven, cigarette butts scattered all around his feet. His whole appearance screamed one word in capital letters: despair. I couldn't be bothered to deal with him and walked away. But he grabbed my hand. "Diana, sister," he said. The moment he opened his mouth, the stench of alcohol hit me. I flung his hand off in disgust. "Mickey, are you seriously mentally ill? We've been divorced for over 2 years. What's the point of pestering me now?" He rushed to explain. "Diana, I lost my memory back then. You're the one I love most. I never wanted to divorce you." A question mark popped up in my head. What he said reminded me of something the doctor once told me: selective amnesia is often triggered by emotional and psychological factors. When a person is desperate to escape from someone or something, they might subconsciously choose to forget. When Mickey got into that car accident, he must have desperately wanted to escape me. After all, at that time, I had become the biggest obstacle between him and Jenny. So after the crash, he chose to forget me, forget the 10 years of love and history we shared, and then, without a shred of guilt, ran straight into Jenny's arms. Now, as his company faces the same kind of crisis we once weathered together, he suddenly remembers me, his ex-wife who stood by him through thick and thin. What a fucking joke. Chapter 18. Diana. Mickey said again. I was just momentarily possessed by a lapse in judgment. I shot back. A lapse in judgment? So that's why you hooked up with Jenny while I was pregnant? A lapse in judgment, so that's why you felt relieved after I had the abortion? A lapse in judgment, so that's why, during the divorce, you couldn't wait to kick me out with nothing? Mickey fell silent. I continued. Don't give me that amnesia crap. You lost your memory, not your brain. Every decision you made afterward was something you had already wanted before the accident. Mickey, I'm not an idiot. And I'm not a 3-year-old. If I were that easy to fool, your company would have gone bankrupt during the startup phase. It would have never come this far. You're only coming to me now because your company's cash flow dried up. And after begging everyone else and getting nowhere, you thought you could pull the emotional card with me. But newsflash, I'm not a recycling bin. Don't come crawling to me again, or I'll call the police. He hung his head in defeat. Maybe the threat of calling the cops worked, because for a while, Mickey stopped following me and calling. The next I heard about him was months later. His company's bankruptcy hit the news. Tony, watching the news in the office, was practically gloating. One less competitor. My dad must be in a great mood. I'm taking David home for dinner tonight. We're going to celebrate. David, the same handsome man who once scowled through a business dinner. Tony, as if recalling something amusing, lit up. TSK, TSK. Watching a rival CEO destroy himself? Now that's one of life's little joys. I gave him a fake smile and poked at him. Are you sure you were just watching? He rolled his eyes at me. As if you're so innocent. I had no words. Because, yeah, I wasn't. Mickey's downfall today wasn't just his own doing. I had a hand in it too. I didn't just snatch clients from him, I also sent anonymous messages to the people he begged for help, warning them that he was untrustworthy. Then Tony, using his young master persona, followed up to confirm it. No one's stupid. Nobody wanted to be the person he stabbed first after getting back on his feet. Kidding? I'm a petty bitch. I hold grudges like sacred vows. Looking back now, it seems light and breezy. All I did was divorce Mickey and abandon our 10-year relationship. But to truly walk away from that relationship, I nearly died on the operating table. I hemorrhaged during the surgery, was rushed into emergency care. Otherwise, why would a routine abortion have kept me in the hospital for that long? And what was Mickey doing at the time? He was with Jenny, probably even scheming with her about how to make sure I left the marriage with nothing. So, as long as it's legal, I'll spare no effort to bring Mickey down. I want him ruined. Didn't Jenny once say they were true love? Well, now's the time to test that. I truly hope that now Mickey has lost everything, she still truly loves him and will stay with him for the long haul. Chapter 19. But as it turns out, things rarely go the way you hope. 3 months after Mickey's bankruptcy, I was coming back from dinner with friends when, in the all-too-familiar underground parking lot, I once again stumbled upon a fight between Mickey and Jenny. The reason? After his bankruptcy and liquidation, Mickey was still in debt and could no longer afford to support Jenny. Jenny wanted a divorce, but Mickey refused. Mickey shouted, "Jenny, now you want to wash your hands clean and walk away with a divorce? No way. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have ended up like this. Say what you want about Mickey, he's a total failure as a human being. But damn if he isn't skilled at blaming everyone else for his mess." Then again, Jenny wasn't holding back either. She snapped right back. "Mickey, did I force you into bed back then? You were the one who couldn't keep it in your pants." What followed was a barrage of verbal abuse, so high in mom content that it could only be described as nuclear level. She cursed everything, from Mickey's mother making her life hell after they got married, to Mickey cheating while they were still married. Clearly, Jenny had reached her limit in this marriage, but Mickey struck back with one brutal line. "If you hadn't willingly become the mistress back then, would my mom have despised you so much? Would everyone treat you like trash?" Jenny broke down. She'd probably had the same fight with Mickey 100 times by now, all ending in frustration. This time, pushed past her limit and completely furious, she slapped Mickey across the face. Smack! The slap rang out, sharp and loud. Mickey froze for a second. Then, in a rage, he shoved Jenny to the ground and stormed off, cursing all the way. And wouldn't you know it, just like fate had scheduled it, I happened to be there again. Jenny, about to run after him, turned and saw me. Maybe she had been fighting with Mickey so much her brain had short-circuited. Because for the first time since she married him, she actually spoke to me. "Diana, are you here to laugh at me?" I paused for a moment, then grinned with pure satisfaction. "Just came to listen, to the sound of your rich girl fantasy shattering." Jenny burst into tears. Chapter 20. They say the two of them eventually divorced, and custody of the child went to Jenny. Jenny also ended up saddled with some of Mickey's debt. In the end, she left City A with the kid. I thought that would be it for Mickey and me, never to cross paths again. But City A is smaller than it seems. I saw Mickey again 3 years later, at the People's Hospital. That day, Tony had gotten the crap beaten out of him by his old man. His father wanted to retire, and Tony seized the moment to come out of the closet. His dad was furious, swore he'd break Tony's legs. And despite his age, the old man absolutely followed through, said he'd break his legs. And he meant it. No bluff. I brought a fruit basket over, purely to mock. I mean, visit Tony. I came out with a mouthful of dog food, only to run into Mickey, in a wheelchair, being pushed by his mother. Mickey Koo was there for a follow-up appointment. While he was inside, I sat with Mrs. Koo for a chat. She told me Mickey had gotten drunk recently. Apparently, he drowned himself in alcohol over his mountain of debt. In the end, Mr. Koo had to step in and pay it off, with nothing left to his name. Mickey finally started thinking about me, staring at our old wedding photo like a man possessed. Then, out of nowhere, he bolted downstairs like a lunatic. She thought he was just going out to blow off steam and didn't think much of it, actually even mocked him, saying things like, "You're thinking about Diana now that you've lost everything? Don't bother, she's disgusted by you." But turns out, Mickey got in a car and drove off looking for me. Drunk, speeding, got into an accident, lost the use of his leg. After that whole build-up, I figured Mrs. Koo was working up to say something nice on Mickey's behalf. I was already prepping a polite response, but instead, she calmly concluded, "Drunk driving is illegal, harms others and yourself. Don't ever do it." Chapter 21. Right after Mrs. Koo dropped her moral of the storyline, Mickey came out. She made an excuse about needing the restroom and asked me, for her sake, to keep an eye on him for a few minutes. Got it. The whole speech earlier was just to create an opportunity for me and Mickey to be alone. It had been 5 or 6 years. I no longer loved or hated Mickey, but staring at that face, I still couldn't resist getting in a few jabs, especially after he said, "Diana, after the crash, I suddenly remembered the vow I made to you a long time ago." I thought to myself, was it that classic line, "If I ever betray you, may I be worse than a dog, struck down by lightning?" Turns out, yes, that exact one. Mickey added, "Do you think this is the universe punishing me?" I paused for a moment and said, "Well, heaven was still being merciful. It could have just killed you outright. But instead, it let you live, just so you could witness this glorious world, exactly as you wished, yet completely irrelevant to you." Mickey broke down. Story 2. Dating James for 7 years. He always refused to marry me. I thought it was because he was financially strapped and didn't want to shortchange me. Until the Dragon Boat Festival, when I was on call for my first surgery. James signed the surgery consent form as the patient's son-in-law. I didn't cry or make a scene. After the surgery, I blocked all of James' contacts. He panicked and waited for me after work at the hospital. "Miranda, it's a marriage of convenience. I'm only with her to get her money to buy a house and marry you. You're the one I've always loved." Chapter 1. I had been dating James for 7 years, and every time I brought up marriage, he would change the subject. I thought he felt financially strained and didn't want to put me through that, intending to save up more money before marrying me. To ease his burden, just before the Dragon Boat Festival, I secretly used my savings to buy a house, planning to surprise him on our anniversary, but I received an urgent call from the hospital to cover a shift. When I called James to explain, I couldn't tell if I was imagining things. Although he outwardly complained about me breaking our plans, his tone seemed like a sigh of relief. I didn't think much of it. After changing into my scrubs, I headed to the operating room to prepare. "Doctor, the patient was in a car accident and has multiple fractures. All the other surgeons are fully booked." "It's okay. I understand. Is the patient almost here?" "Yes. They just arrived and are being brought in." "All right. I'll go meet with the family for consent forms." I walked into the pre-op consultation room and pressed the call button for the family. It wasn't long before the family member entered and sat down. I finished looking over the patient's file and finally looked up, only to find that the family member was James. "You're the patient's family?" Because I was wearing a hat and mask, James clearly didn't recognize me. "Yes, I'm his son-in-law." Chapter 2. I thought I had misheard, so I asked again, but the answer was the same. My hand tightened around the consent form, and my heart felt heavy and suffocated. "Doctor? Doctor?" James' voice snapped me back to reality. I looked at the man in front of me, the one who should have been the most familiar but now felt like a complete stranger. Then, I glanced at the patient's file, taking a deep breath. "The surgery risks are all listed here. Please review them. If everything is fine, sign the form so I can proceed with the surgery." James took the form and carefully reviewed it. I stared at him, watching him sign, and then his face changed as he read through the document. "Surgeon Miranda? You're Miranda?" He jerked his head up, looking at me in disbelief. I snatched the consent form from his hand, my voice icy. Completely unlike my usual tone, yes, please wait outside. After the surgery, we'll take the patient directly back to the room. I turned and walked away, with James shouting for me to listen to his explanation, but I had no intention of stopping, suppressing the disappointment, sadness, and disbelief in my heart. I calmly completed the surgery and helped the nurses wheel the patient back to the room. Although I didn't want to see James again, I had to inform the family about the post-op precautions. Fortunately, James wasn't there this time. I met the patient's daughter instead, James' nominal wife. Chapter 3. The woman was very beautiful, completely different from my style. She had the kind of bold, flamboyant personality that was immediately apparent. So, was this the reason James never wanted to marry me? Thinking about our 7-year relationship, my heart ached as if someone was squeezing it. I forced myself to push through the discomfort, giving her the post-op instructions at a rapid pace. Keep your head turned. Don't use a pillow for 6 hours to prevent choking if there's vomiting. Call me if anything happens. Before she could respond, I rushed out of the room. I wanted to escape from anything and anyone that reminded me of James. I took half a day off from the hospital and returned to the apartment James and I used to live in together. The walls were still covered with pictures of us. The bathroom, the bedroom, everywhere carried the traces of our life together. My eyes stung, but no tears came. 7 years of love ended in that moment. The moment I learned James had secretly married someone else. We had broken up and gotten back together many times, but none had left me as disappointed as this. James. We're finished. For good. Chapter 4. The apartment was rented by James. I packed my things quickly and sent James a message. I told him I didn't want anything else and that he could do whatever he wanted with the rest. Then, I blocked all his contacts and left with my luggage, heading to the new house I had bought. Work at the hospital kept me so busy that I didn't have time to process my feelings about the breakup. I could only act as if nothing had happened and continue working. James' father-in-law seemed to be recovering well after the surgery. Thanks to his good health, to avoid further contact with James, I wanted to transfer the case to another doctor. But when the other doctors heard the patient's name, they all shook their heads and refused. Miranda, it's not that we don't want to help you, but this family is just too troublesome. We don't want to get involved. Seeing their reactions, I couldn't force them, so I had no choice but to keep handling it myself. It didn't take long for me to understand what they meant by troublesome. James' wife, Alice, barged straight into the doctor's office, yanking me up from my seat. You quack! My father's face is turning purple. Did you mess up the surgery? Purple face? Hearing this, I didn't bother addressing her rude attitude. I broke free from her grip and immediately rushed to the room with the nurse. The scene I walked into made my blood rush to my head. I was so angry. My head pounded. After resolving the situation, I barely had time to catch my breath before Alice stormed back in front of me. What did you do to my father again? I'm telling you, if anything happens to him, I'll make sure. Before she could finish her sentence, my frustration boiled over, and I slapped her across the face. Did I or did I not tell you no pillows? Did I or did I not say to keep his head turned? He nearly choked to death on his own vomit. If something had happened, would it be your fault or mine? I've dealt with disobedient family members before, but never anyone this reckless. And to top it off, this woman was my boyfriend's wife. With that in mind, it was impossible for me to stay calm. Alice was just about to retort when James pushed through the crowd and rushed in. The previously domineering woman instantly transformed into a helpless damsel in distress. She threw herself into James' arms, crying, "Honey, this quack doctor hit me." 7 years. Except for the very beginning of our relationship, James never comforted me when I cried. But now, here he was, frantically wiping away Alice's tears. Caring or not, it's not something you can fake. I laughed bitterly, not wanting to get entangled with these people any longer, and turned to leave. Miranda, wait! A familiar voice stopped me in my tracks. I turned around. I know you have issues with me, but Alice is innocent. You shouldn't have hit her. Excuse me? Miranda, we've broken up. Alice is my wife now. I hope, as a doctor, You can maintain professionalism and not bring your personal emotions into your work." The crowd murmured around us, and my fellow doctors and nurses shot me strange looks. I was both furious and stunned. I couldn't believe the same James who had tried to explain himself before the surgery was now saying these things in front of Alice. I wanted to argue, but no matter what I said, it would make me look bad. As I was thinking about how to respond, someone came up behind me and placed an arm around my shoulders. Instinctively, I wanted to pull away, but the man whispered in my ear, "I've got you." I immediately let down my guard and allowed him to proceed. Chapter 5. James saw the man holding me so intimately. His expression shifted, and he was the first to speak. "Who are you?" "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Luis, Miranda's fiancé." Luis was half a head taller than James, dressed in a black suit, with a sharp nose and handsome features. His looks far surpassed James, with Luis showing up and claiming to be my fiancé. Naturally, no one would believe I'd still be involved with James. The rumors collapsed on their own, though Alice and James tried to keep arguing. But when the old man woke up, they were too busy taking care of him to deal with anything else. I took the opportunity to leave. Once we reached a quiet corner, I shook off Luis' arm. "Thanks for that." After expressing my gratitude, I was about to walk away, but Luis grabbed my arm. "That's a pretty half-hearted thank you, don't you think? So, what do you want?" "Take me out for dinner tonight." After a moment's thought, I couldn't find a reason to refuse, so I nodded. We exchanged contact information, and I returned to the office, only to receive a notice from the hospital asking me to take a temporary leave. "Miranda, we know it wasn't your fault, but you did hit a patient's family member, and the impact isn't good. Take a few days off, and your salary will remain unchanged." All right. Honestly, I'd been overwhelmed with surgeries this year, with all my holidays taken up. This break was exactly what I needed. I went home, changed into a floral dress, and applied light makeup. Just as I finished getting ready, I got a call from Luis. "Hey, I'm downstairs. No rush. Take your time." His voice was soft, as if he were speaking to someone he liked. I shook my head to myself, thinking, here's another playboy, best to avoid getting involved. Luis took me to a newly opened, trendy restaurant. It was crowded, so we chose a private room in the back. Before sitting down, Luis used a wet wipe to clean my chair and the table. He then asked the waiter for hot water and skillfully sterilized the bowls and chopsticks for me. For someone who looked like a spoiled rich kid, he did all these things without seeming out of place. You've probably had more than a few girlfriends, right? I couldn't help but comment. Being his girlfriend, even if he wasn't fully invested, would at least make someone feel comfortable with all this attention to detail. Unlike me, after 7 years of dating, except for the first year when James was pursuing me and the first 6 months we were together, I never experienced being cared for like this again. It was always me taking care of James. I even turned down a job at a hospital in my hometown, moved over 1,000 kilometers to a city where I knew no one, and worked hard to build a life here. Once we moved in together, I did everything, no matter how busy work was. I'd always make James something special to eat when I got home, and in the end, what I got in return was finding out he had secretly married someone else. It's only now that I realize, if love isn't reciprocated, it should end early. That way, you won't hurt yourself in the long run. The dishes were served, and Luis, while placing a piece of meat into my bowl, glanced up at me. "You're mistaken, sis. I've never had a girlfriend." Chapter 6. I froze for a moment, confused by how someone who had never been in a relationship could be so attentive and caring. Noticing my confusion, Luis chuckled softly. "They show it all the time on TV. Sis, anyone with a bit of intention can learn." There was a hint in his words, as if he were mocking me for not seeing that James had been half-hearted all along. I buried my head and took a few bites of food. "I learned all this just for you, sis." "Huh? What did you say?" I was so shocked by Luis' words that I didn't swallow my food properly and started choking. He quickly stood up, handed me water, and gently patted my back. "Take it slow, sis. Even though I ordered all your favorites, you don't have to eat so fast." Hearing what he said, I finally took a closer look at the dishes on the table. They really were all my favorites. But Luis hadn't let me order. How did he know what I liked? You. We both started speaking at the same time. I smiled and gestured for Luis to go first. Have you really forgotten about me, sis? Chapter 7. His eyes looked hurt, and a wave of guilt washed over me. I searched my memory, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't recall ever meeting him. Luis, maybe you've got the wrong person? As soon as I said it, a flash of sadness crossed Luis' face before he returned to his usual demeanor. With the way I looked back then, it's no surprise you don't remember me. Even though he said it didn't bother him, Luis was clearly down for the rest of the meal. I felt a bit guilty, too. After dinner, Luis offered to drive me home. When we arrived, I unbuckled my seatbelt, ready to thank him and get out of the car. But he suddenly leaned in. His face was so close, barely an inch away. I could feel his hot breath. Aren't you going to invite me up, sis? I should have refused, but looking at his face, and the nervousness in his eyes, I couldn't get the words out. If James could easily betray our 7-year relationship, why couldn't I let loose and start fresh? Besides, this man in front of me, apart from being a bit younger, was good-looking, gentle, and better than James in every way. With that thought, I leaned forward, my lips brushing lightly against his cheek. Are you sure you want to come up? I won't be responsible for whatever happens. With you thinking that way, sis, I couldn't be happier. With that, Luis kissed me. His clumsy kissing technique confirmed what he had said earlier. He really hadn't been in a relationship before. Chapter 8. As soon as I opened the door, Luis kissed me with urgency. We hadn't even caught our breath from climbing the stairs when his dominant and forceful kiss left me almost breathless. After a long while, Luis finally pulled back, his eyes filled with conflicting emotions. Sis, if you regret this now, it's still not too late. Shouldn't I be asking you that? Little brother, if you regret this, I'll let you go. Otherwise, before I could finish, Luis silenced me with another passionate kiss. There was no turning back now. Afterward, Luis leaned down to kiss my lips and wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes. Don't cry, sis. I'll take good care of you. Chapter 9. Our first night was long. The physical and emotional pain, along with exhaustion, made me fall into a deep sleep. When I woke up, the bed was already cold. Luis' warmth had long since disappeared. I felt a slight pang in my heart, but I reminded myself that I had wanted to let loose for once and had already said I wouldn't take responsibility for anything. It was normal for Luis to leave. As I dragged my sore body out of bed and started to throw the sheets into the washing machine, a pair of hands interrupted me. Luis, you didn't leave? Of course, I didn't. We've already slept together. Sis, now you have to take responsibility for me. Sunlight streamed into the room, making Luis' side profile seem to glow. I stared at him, unable to snap out of it for a long time. Maybe this is what my girlfriends were always talking about, the irresistible puppy-like younger guys. Despite having said I wouldn't be responsible for anything, I found myself nodding without thinking. But after breakfast, when Luis carried me back to bed and his hands began to roam over my body again, I regretted it. It's still early. Sis, let's go one more time. No. I refused firmly, but it seemed like Luis didn't hear me and continued his actions. My resistance was futile. After another round of intimacy, I lay powerless in Luis' arms. He gently stroked my hair and kissed the spot behind my ear. Sis, you're finally mine. His words were filled with the joy of finally getting something he had long desired, and a deep sense of guilt rose in my heart. Luis must have mistaken me for someone else. I'm sorry, Luis. I dragged you into this just because of a fleeting impulse. Why are you apologizing, sis? Luis' eyes were filled with concern as he kissed away the tears from the corners of my eyes. This was mutual. There's no need for you to apologize, but I'm not the person in your heart. For some reason, tears kept falling from my eyes. Luis quickly sat up and gently wiped away my tears. Once my emotions calmed down, he spoke with a serious expression. Miranda, it's you. It's always been you. Chapter 10. My relationship with Luis continued from there. To me, It was just an arrangement between two adults, each getting what they needed. But Luis clearly didn't see it that way. Seeing how seriously he treated our relationship, I couldn't bring myself to crush his hopes, so I just let things be. After a week off, I received a call from the hospital asking me to return to work. Luis drove me there. As soon as I got out of the car, I saw James standing at the entrance of the clinic, holding a large pile of luggage. The moment he saw me, he set down his things and quickly walked toward me. But I had no intention of acknowledging him. As soon as he reached me, I didn't even spare him a glance. Walking right past him, "Miranda, stop!" As James spoke, he jogged a few steps to grab my arm. I impatiently shook him off. "What do you want?" "Miranda, it's been a week. Haven't you had enough? It's time to stop this nonsense." "Nonsense?" I couldn't help but laugh in anger. "We've been together for 7 years, and you went behind my back to marry someone else. And you think I'm the one making a fuss?" James' face froze for a moment. Then he put on a pitiful expression. "Miranda, after all these years together, I thought you understood me." "Understand you?" "James, how did I never realize before how shameless you are? When we were together, I thought he was fine, apart from not being considerate enough. Now that I've let go, I can see how truly awful he is." James was still holding onto my hand, about to say something when he glanced past me, immediately releasing my hand and hurrying forward. "Alice, finally, you're here. Let's go home now." The same man who was just asking me to understand him was now walking past me with his arm around another woman, not even sparing me a glance. Watching the scene unfold, I couldn't help but feel like my 7 years of devotion had been fed to the dogs. "Hey, isn't that the doctor who operated on my dad?" Alice stopped in her tracks. Looking at me, I stared right back at her, curious to see what she was planning this time. Although we were at the hospital entrance, and I needed to be mindful of the situation, I wasn't about to let her walk all over me. To my surprise, Alice's attitude was completely different this time. "I'm sorry, doctor. I was overly emotional before. Where's your fiancé? Why isn't he with you this time?" Before I could even be surprised at her sudden change in attitude, her next sentence revealed her true intentions. Looking at James standing next to her, seething but too afraid to speak, I couldn't help but laugh. "He just left. I can introduce you to sometime if you'd like," I said politely, then added with a sharp tone. "But Alice, constantly eyeing other people's boyfriends isn't exactly a good habit." The looks on their faces, as if they'd just eaten something foul, gave me immense satisfaction. I swung my bag over my shoulder and walked into the hospital, ignoring Alice's shrill screams from behind. Chapter 11. On my first day back at work, things weren't too busy. Just after lunch, Luis called me. "Sis, why don't you ditch work? I want to take you somewhere nice tonight." "Tonight? It's still early. Why the rush?" I was confused. "Come on, start getting ready. I'm downstairs." By the way, I shook my head with a smile and, after telling my colleague, I changed and left. Luis took me to a mall. He led me straight to the top floor, where the dress boutique was, and picked out several gowns for me to try on. "Sis, these are similar to your usual style. Go ahead and try them." I was about to refuse, but seeing the hopeful look in his eyes, I couldn't say no. I remembered what my friend once said, it's impossible to resist a puppy-like guy's requests. Yep, she was right. In the end, under Louis' strong encouragement, I chose a black gown with a long train. I paired it with bold red lipstick to match. Looking at the person in the mirror, I could hardly believe it was me. Before, I was always too busy with work to pay attention to my appearance, at most applying light makeup. Whenever I saved a bit of money, I couldn't bear to spend it on expensive clothes, always focused on buying a home and marrying James as soon as possible. If it weren't for being with Luis, if it weren't for him bringing me here, I couldn't imagine that I could ever look this beautiful. Luis dismissed the makeup artist and hugged me from behind. "Sis, looking like this, I almost don't want to take you out anymore." The desire in his voice was so raw. His lips moved from my ear toward my mouth, and I hurriedly turned away. "No, you'll ruin my makeup." He paused for a moment, but his breathing only grew heavier. A bad feeling rose in my chest. There's still time before tonight. Sis, how about we? He lightly grazed my earlobe with his teeth. A shiver ran through me, and my voice weakened. No, there are too many people here. I've already sent them home, and the store's closed. Sis, don't worry. Before I could argue further, Luis silenced me with a kiss. His heated, intense kiss left me limp on the sofa, unable to resist his actions. As he moved, he whispered in my ear, "Sis, I love you. Never leave me." I drifted into sleep again, exhausted and overwhelmed by pleasure. When I woke up, I felt someone drawing on my face. Startled, I opened my eyes to see Luis's face, close and magnified before me. "Don't worry, sis. It's me. We'll fix your makeup and then leave." The mess had been cleaned up, and my makeup was as fresh as before the workout. The only difference was the dress I was wearing. Noticing my confusion, Luis spoke up. "Don't worry, sis. I did all the cleaning myself. No one else came in. The dress was torn, so I got you a new one." Seeing the pile of torn dresses in the corner, I murmured with a bit of sadness, "What a waste. They were so expensive." "It's not expensive. It doesn't compare to you. Not even a fraction," Luis said, pausing his actions to kneel and help me into a pair of prepared high heels. After so many years with James, I had never been treated with such care and tenderness. "Luis, why are you so good to me?" Luis sat down beside me and held me close. "Because you're worth it, Miranda." Hearing my name for the first time from him confirmed that I wasn't anyone's substitute. What Luis cared about and cherished was truly me. Chapter 12. That night, Luis took me to a friend's birthday party. We arrived fashionably late, and as soon as we walked in, all eyes were on us. "Wow, you actually brought a date. That's something new." The guest of honor greeted us, hugging Luis and then nodding at me. "Yes, my fiancé, Miranda." Hearing Luis's introduction surprised me for a moment, but I didn't speak up to contradict him. His friend said, "Hello, I'm Leo." After nodding in greeting, I followed Luis as he greeted the rest of his friends before sitting down in a corner. I rarely wear high heels, and after just a short while, my ankles were already aching. Luis noticed and knelt down to massage my feet. My face turned bright red, and I felt the curious gazes of the people around us. I couldn't bring myself to lift my head. I whispered to Luis, okay, get up." He saw my expression and chuckled softly, then stood up and gave me a quick, affectionate kiss on the lips. Trying to compose myself, I kept my head down and distracted myself by scrolling through my phone, finally able to ignore the stares. Soon after, a loud commotion erupted around us. I followed everyone's gaze. James and Alice. What were they doing here? James had fallen to the ground, and Alice was sitting beside him, crying. I glanced at Luis, and he understood. After asking around, he returned to me. "That guy fell off the platform." Luis didn't even use James's name, calling him that guy, his jealous expression making me laugh. "You're not worried about him, are you, sis?" "Of course not, Luis. I'm the type to hold grudges." Hearing that, Luis let out a sigh of relief, put my hand on his arm, and led me over. Leo came up to us and explained, "Looks like he's hurt pretty badly. I've already called an ambulance." TCH. What a way to ruin a birthday. Leo sounded irritated, and Luis patted his back, offering a few comforting words. Alice heard Luis's voice and immediately looked up at him. "Can you help me?" Her pitiful appearance could have moved anyone, if I didn't already know her true nature. Seeing that Luis ignored her, Alice walked up to him and grabbed his sleeve. Luis's expression darkened instantly. "Let go!" He roughly shook Alice off, then, with disgust, took off his jacket and threw it on the ground. I glanced at Luis, then at James lying on the ground, and couldn't help but feel a wave of emotions. Luis kept his distance from other women to avoid making me jealous. And James, the man I had loved for 7 years, had married someone else behind my back. The choice between them had become obvious long ago. With that thought, I walked toward James. Chapter 13. "Sis." Luis's voice sounded anxious. I smiled at him. "Luis, I'm a doctor. He understood, and the unease on his face faded, replaced by his usual gentle expression. I crouched beside James and examined his unnaturally bent arm. It wasn't broken, probably just dislocated. After checking a few times, I grabbed his arm and with a quick motion, snapped it back into place. James screamed, then moved his arm in disbelief. "I'm better, Miranda. Thank you. I knew you were the best." James tried to hug me, completely ignoring the fact that his wife was still there. Unlike that vicious woman, when I was about to fall, she used me as a cushion. Luis stepped in front of me, stopping James in his tracks, and at that moment, I realized what had just happened. Seeing James's eyes filled with love and gratitude, as if we were still together, I stepped out from behind Luis. "James, you've misunderstood. I helped you only because I'm a doctor." Leo's birthday party lasted until past 10 at night, and I was feeling tired. So Luis and I left early. Meanwhile, James and Alice kept arguing, ruining Leo's mood, and eventually, they were kicked out. Luis's friends mentioned that the two even got into a physical fight, shouting that they would get divorced the next day. I just smiled and didn't say anything. Whatever happened to them no longer had anything to do with me. Chapter 14. After a month of being with Luis, on a weekend off, Luis took me to the beach. He rented an entire island to propose to me. There were fireworks that lasted half the night. In front of family and friends, I put on the ring and embraced my future. He was as happy as a child. The next day, we went to the civil affairs office and got our marriage certificate. It wasn't until I saw his household registration that I finally understood the origin of his feelings for me. Luis used to go by the name Lucas. No wonder I had a sense of familiarity the first time we met. No wonder I felt a similar familiarity when I met his parents. It turns out we had met 5 years ago. Chapter 15. The first surgery I ever performed. My very first patient was Lucas. At the time, Luis had been in a car accident, and his entire face was wrapped in bandages. The surgery I performed was for his leg fracture. After the surgery, there was a time when he couldn't stand due to the trauma. I stayed by his side the whole time, helping him with his rehabilitation and encouraging him. He witnessed the beginning of my career as a doctor, and I gave him the courage to step out of the shadows. It turns out we crossed paths long before I realized. Looking at the man beside me now, I could still see traces of that college student from back then. "So, how did your dad come up with the name Lucas?" I teased, but he didn't mind at all, affectionately ruffling my hair. He liked the name, so that's what he called me. But after the car accident, he said it wasn't lucky, so he changed it to Luis. Strangely enough, before the name change, I always seemed to have small accidents. But after changing my name, nothing ever happened again. My dad says it's because of the name change, but I think it's because I met you. Sis, you gave me a new life. No, Luis, you gave me a new future. You made me believe that I also deserve to be loved so deeply. Chapter 16. In the apartment Miranda once shared with James, James was collapsed by the bedside, empty bottles scattered all over the floor. He was drunk, muttering continuously, "Miranda, Miranda." The reason he married Alice at the time was because Alice had promised that they could get divorced after 6 months and that she would give him 1 million as compensation for those 6 months. Back then, he still had feelings for Miranda, but the thought of the 1 million made him decide to marry Alice in secret. After marrying Alice, her beauty, her willingness to dress up, and the occasional display of vulnerability attracted him. It was completely different from Miranda, who always dressed plainly and hardly ever wore makeup. Without realizing it, he was drawn to Alice and started to like her, but he couldn't let go of the 7 years he had with Miranda. He thought he could have both, 2 women, as long as he wasn't caught. It wasn't until his father-in-law's surgery that he saw the name of the attending physician. At that moment, his first thought was to try and win Miranda back. But when a conflict arose between Miranda and Alice, after weighing his options, he still chose to protect Alice first. When faced with 7 years of love versus money, it only took him a moment to choose money. Later, after seeing Alice constantly throwing herself at other men, he realized that she had never been sincere about marrying him. She used him to solve the problem of her father pressuring her to get married. and then immediately wanted to discard him. She even used him as a cushion when she fell. James finally woke up. He divorced Alice. Although he didn't get the money, he still had Miranda. But half a month passed, and his messages went unanswered. His calls never connected. "Miranda, do you really not want me anymore?" James murmured, tears streaming down his face. "No, Miranda and I have years of history. She's just waiting for me to apologize. As long as I admit my mistakes, she'll come back." Chapter 17. After Luis and I got our marriage certificate, we were about to go out and celebrate when I received a call from the hospital. They needed me for surgery. I looked apologetically at Luis, but he didn't mind at all. "Sis, I love you and I love your profession too, so there's no need to feel guilty." He drove me back to the hospital and waited for me in the car. He only came to pick me up after the surgery was done. My colleagues teased me when they saw him. "Miranda, you've really made a good choice this time. He's much better than the last one." "Of course," I laughed, holding Luis's hand as we left together. As we walked into the hospital lobby, a figure suddenly appeared, blocking my way. James, dressed in a black suit, his hair clearly styled with care, but the dark circles under his eyes and the redness in them were impossible to hide. He held a bouquet of roses and immediately knelt down on one knee in front of me. "Miranda, I was only with Alice to get her money to buy a house for us. I know I was wrong now. Will you forgive me?" Before I could speak, a hand took the flowers and threw them into the trash can nearby. "Who do you think you are, throwing away my flowers?" James panicked and stood up, shouting at Luis. Luis smirked. "It's only been a few days, James, and you don't recognize me? You're Luis?" "Yeah," Luis replied, raising our clasped hands, the wedding rings on our fingers unmistakable. James looked at me in disbelief, seeking confirmation. "Miranda, you? Could you please move? Don't interrupt my date with my husband." "Thank you." I watched as James's face fell, tears streaming down his cheeks. But all I felt was a brief moment of sadness for the 7 years we had shared. There was no other emotion. I was now Luis's wife, and I had completely let go of that past. Chapter 18. 3 years after the wedding, Luis and I had a daughter. She looked exactly like me when I was a child. My parents and Luis's parents were overjoyed, spending all their time playing with our daughter. Back when I was with James, I never even dreamed that I could have a life like this. I didn't have to move far away, and my parents were still close by. Luis made all of this possible. Our daughter has a lively personality, completely different from how I was as a child. Luis spends all day with her, fulfilling her every wish, spoiling her endlessly. But whenever she asks if he loves mommy or her more, Luis always firmly replies, "Of course, I love your mommy more. No one is more important than her." I can't help but laugh when I see our daughter pout in jealousy, standing off to the side. I'm so grateful I studied medicine, and even more grateful that I met Luis. Without him, I would never have this peaceful, happy life. The summer our daughter turned 4, she went missing for half a day. Luis practically searched the entire city. It wasn't until the evening that she came back, holding a strawberry bear and bouncing around. "Mommy, a man took me to the amusement park all afternoon. He bought me lots of delicious food and fun toys." Luis and I exchanged a puzzled look, and our daughter continued, "That man knows you, Mommy. He said he was sorry and that he lost you." "Daddy, what did the man mean?" Our daughter looked up at Luis and asked. Luis scooped her up and pulled me close to him. "It doesn't mean anything, sweetie. All you need to know is that we're a happy family together." "Okay."